All right, jumping right into things today.
It's good.
We're taking a deep dive into the news that's making waves in India.
Okay.
We're talking headlines straight out of the major Indian newspapers,
All right.
all from January 31st, 2025.
Got it.
It's a pretty wild mix, gotta say.
Oh, yeah.
Everything from the economic survey being presented in Parliament
Interesting.
to a legendary cricketer making a comeback.
Oh, wow. Okay, so like a real snapshot of a nation on the move.
Yeah, exactly. And to kind of set the scene a bit more for everyone, it's budget session in Parliament right now.
Right.
Which, always puts the spotlight on the economic outlook.
Yeah, makes sense.
So let's just jump right into that then.
Okay.
The economic survey for 2024-25 has just been released.
Yeah.
And one thing that really jumps out at me is this prediction
Yeah.
that India's consumer market is going to become the world's second largest by 2030.
Wow.
We're talking a market worth 4.3 trillion US dollars.
That's massive.
It's mind-boggling. It is. And this is something you definitely want to keep an eye on
Yeah.
if you're at all interested in emerging markets.
Right.
This kind of growth means like rapidly expanding middle class with more purchasing power,
Right.
which could mean big opportunities for investors.
Huge.
Yeah.
So it seems like in the long run, things are looking pretty bright.
Yeah. Seems that way.
But the survey also acknowledges this recent slowdown.
Mm-hmm.
Growth has dipped to 5.4% in the second quarter of 2024-25.
Okay.
What do you think's behind that?
Well, like old economies,
Yeah.
India isn't really immune to global events.
True.
Things like international tensions
Mm-hmm.
and inflation have created some headwinds.
Right.
But there are also some positive signs, though.
Okay.
Strong spending during recent festivals
Oh, interesting.
and rising demand in rural areas suggest that
Okay.
the economy is already finding its footing again.
So maybe not a full-blown crisis.
Yeah.
But definitely something to keep an eye on. What about the stock market?
Yeah.
I see some mentions of the Nifty index
Mm-hmm.
and some predicted volatility.
Okay.
For those of us who maybe don't follow the Indian stock market that closely, what does that actually mean?
Well, the Nifty 50, or Nifty Index as it's often called,
Yeah.
is basically India's version of the Dow Jones Industrial Average.
Okay.
It tracks the performance of
Okay.
the top 50 companies on the National Stock Exchange of India.
Got it.
The prediction is that it'll fluctuate
Mm-hmm.
somewhere between 25,000 and 27,500 points this year.
Okay.
That kind of swing can make investors a little jittery,
Understandably.
but it also creates opportunities for those who are comfortable with a bit more risk.
So kind of a roller coaster ride,
Yeah,
but potentially a lucrative one.
exactly.
And then, of course, there's the looming shadow of Trump's tariff threats.
Oh, right.
How might those affect the economic picture?
That's the wild card, isn't it?
Yeah.
If those tariffs actually become reality, they could have a significant impact on Indo-U.S. trade.
For sure.
And we're not just talking hypotheticals here.
Right.
Imagine, for instance, tariffs targeting India's booming tech sector.
Oh, wow.
That could directly affect your investments in companies like Infosys or Wipro.
That's a good point.
It's a reminder that even a seemingly distant trade war can have ripple effects that hit close to home.
Definitely makes you think twice about where you put your money.
Yeah.
Okay, let's switch gears a bit
Okay.
and talk politics.
Right.
Akhilesh Yadav, a major political figure, has just joined Arvind Kejriwal's rally.
Interesting.
And there's a lot of talk about a possible alliance between their parties.
Okay.
What's the significance of this, especially with elections on the horizon?
Well, this is a potential game changer.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yadav leads the Samajwadi Party,
Right.
a major player in Uttar Pradesh, India's most populous state.
Right.
By joining forces with Kejriwal's Admi Party, they're sending a very clear signal.
What's that?
They want to build
Okay.
a united opposition front
Yeah.
against the ruling BJP party.
Makes sense.
And Yadav didn't mince words at the rally.
Oh, yeah.
Issued a direct warning to the BJP
About
the power of this alliance.
So a potential shakeup of the political landscape then.
Yeah, definitely something to watch.
Especially as we head towards those upcoming elections.
For sure.
And it's interesting that this is happening just as the House Committee on Foreign Affairs in the U.S. is starting to review their policy towards India.
Okay.
It seems like India's global standing is getting more and more attention these days.
Absolutely. The fact that U.S. policymakers are specifically looking at defense cooperation and counterterrorism efforts with India
Okay.
underscores how crucial the country has become on the world stage.
Yeah.
It's a partnership that has implications for, like, global security and stability.
All right. Makes sense. Okay, enough of the serious stuff for a minute.
Okay, sure.
Let's talk about something.
All right.
That's sure to bring a smile to a lot of faces.
Okay.
Virat Kohli is back.
Oh, wow.
He's playing in the Ranji Trophy.
Yeah.
Which is a domestic cricket tournament.
Right.
And apparently the crowds are going wild.
Awesome.
I have to admit, even as someone who doesn't follow cricket that closely, I know this guy's a legend.
Oh, he is.
Yeah.
Kohli's presence just elevates the entire tournament.
Totally.
And it's a testament to his dedication to the sport.
For sure.
That he's choosing to play at this level.
Right.
It's not just about the wins. It's about inspiring the next generation of cricketers.
Right.
And giving back to the game he loves.
It's that kind of passion that makes cricket such a phenomenon in India.
It really is.
But speaking of large gatherings,
Yeah.
there's some somber news coming out of the Maha Kumbh Mela.
Right.
A major religious festival that attracts millions of pilgrims.
Yeah, a stampede sadly occurred.
Oh, gosh.
Which resulted in multiple casualties.
That's awful. It's just a stark reminder of the challenges that come with managing events of that scale. You know, a real tragedy for those involved.
It is.
What kind of response has there been?
Well, the government acted quickly.
Okay.
To implement some immediate measures.
Right.
Things like no vehicle zones and one-way routes.
Yeah.
To try and improve crowd flow.
Okay.
They've also announced a judicial commission.
All right.
To investigate what led to the stampede.
That makes sense. So hopefully something like this can be prevented in the future.
Yeah, exactly.
And it kind of brings to mind some other issues that are often part of this conversation about large events and urban planning. We see here that Supriya Sula, a member of parliament, is criticizing what she sees as poor planning and rising pollution levels. And she's linking it to a rise in cases of Guillain-Barré Syndrome.
That's a really important point.
It is.
You know, we often focus on the immediate spectacle of these events.
Yeah.
But there are these long-term consequences to consider as well. Like, how do we balance the economic and cultural benefits of events, like the Kumbh Mela, with the need to protect public health and the environment?
It's a tough question.
It is.
It feels like a microcosm of the broader challenges India is facing as it develops.
All right.
And speaking of challenges, we touched earlier on that online debate sparked by that Google engineer's LinkedIn post about referral requests. It seemed to strike a nerve with a lot of people.
Yeah.
What do you think was behind that reaction?
I think it touched on a few sensitive points.
Right.
Especially for those in the tech industry.
Right.
The job market is so competitive, and people are understandably anxious.
For sure.
About getting their foot in the door.
Totally.
The engineer's advice, while probably well-intentioned, came across as a bit out of touch with the reality that many job seekers face.
Right. It's almost like it highlighted a disconnect between those who are already established in their careers and those who are still trying to break in.
Exactly. And it sparked this wider conversation about how we can make networking more equitable and less reliant on who you know.
Definitely food for thought.
It is.
Okay, let's move on to another headline that caught my eye.
All right.
The Supreme Court just dismissed a case
Okay.
against a pharmaceutical company that was accused of producing substandard drugs.
Interesting.
This seems like it could have major implications.
It absolutely does. This ruling raises some serious questions about how drug quality and safety are regulated in India. It's a reminder that access to safe and effective medication is a fundamental right, and that the regulatory system needs to be robust enough to protect that.
Right, because ultimately people's health and well-being are at stake.
Exactly.
And this case has sparked a lot of discussion about the role of pharmaceutical companies and the responsibility they have to ensure the quality of their products.
And it highlights the need for greater transparency and accountability within the industry.
Absolutely. Now, before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to circle back to something we touched on earlier.
Right.
India's growing global influence between the projected growth of the consumer market, the political alliances forming, and the U.S.'s increased focus on India.
Right.
It seems like the country is stepping onto the world stage.
Yeah.
In a big way.
There's no doubt about it.
Right.
India is becoming a major player, both economically and politically.
Right. And this is where things get really interesting.
It is.
How will India navigate this new role?
That's the question.
Yeah.
Will it use its influence to promote cooperation and stability on the global stage?
These are some big questions.
They are.
And I'm especially curious about what this means for India's relationships with other countries.
Yes, that's a key element to consider.
It is.
How will those relationships evolve as India's power and influence grow?
It feels like we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
We have, from economic forecasts and, political maneuvering to social concerns and legal rulings. It's
a lot.
It is. Yeah. We've really gotten a sense of what's making headlines in India today.
And one thing that keeps coming back to me is this sense of a nation at a crossroads. India is clearly on the rise, but there are so many different paths it could take.
Right.
What do you think are the biggest factors that will shape India's future?
That's the million-dollar question.
It is.
I think one crucial factor will be how India manages its economic growth.
Right.
Can it maintain this upward trajectory while ensuring that the benefits are shared more equitably and sustainably?
Okay.
We've already seen some of the challenges. The recent economic slowdown, concerns about pollution and urban planning, the need for greater regulation.
Right.
In industries like pharmaceuticals, addressing these issues will be key to India's long-term success.
It's almost like India is trying to balance on a tightrope, trying to accelerate economic growth while also making sure it's done in a way that benefits all of its citizens and doesn't jeopardize the environment.
Exactly. And that's not an easy balancing act.
No, it's not.
It requires careful planning, strategic decision-making.
For sure.
And a willingness to address difficult issues head-on.
Absolutely. And of course, we can't forget about the political landscape with elections looming, the alliances that are formed, and the policies that are debated. Will have a major impact on the direction the country takes.
Absolutely. We've seen how the potential alliance between Akhilesh Yadav and Arvind Kejriwal could really shake things up. And there's also the question of how India will navigate its relationships with other countries.
It's true. Especially as its global influence grows.
Exactly. We talked earlier about the U.S. House Committee's review of policy towards India. That's just one example of how India's actions are being watched closely.
For sure.
On the world stage.
It is fascinating to think about the potential ripple effects of India's decisions, both domestically and internationally.
Absolutely.
And speaking of ripple effects, let's bring it back to something a little closer to home.
All right.
You mentioned earlier that the growth of India's consumer market could create big opportunities for investors.
Right.
What advice would you give to someone who's thinking about dipping their toes into emerging markets like India?
It's definitely a space worth exploring.
Okay.
But it's essential to do your research and proceed with caution.
Okay.
Don't just jump in blindly because of the hype.
Right.
Look for companies that are well managed, have a solid track record, and are operating in sectors that align with your investment goals.
Makes sense.
And remember that emerging markets can be volatile.
Right.
So be prepared for some ups and downs along the way.
So diversify, do your homework, and buckle up for the ride.
Precisely. And don't be afraid to seek advice from financial professionals who specialize in these markets.
Okay.
They can help you navigate the complexities and make informed decisions.
Great advice. Well, I think we've just about reached the end of our deep dive.
That was good.
It's been quite a journey.
It has.
And I have to say, I'm leaving with more questions than answers.
Oh, really?
But I guess that's the beauty of it, isn't it?
I think so.
It sparked my curiosity.
Yeah.
It made me want to learn more about this complex and dynamic country.
That's the best outcome we could hope for.
Is it?
Yeah. The goal of this deep dive wasn't to give you all the answers, but to open your eyes to the many facets of India today.
Okay.
And encourage you to continue exploring.
So as we wrap things up,
I
want to leave our listeners with a final thought.
All right.
We've talked a lot about India's economic potential, its political landscape, and its growing global influence.
Right.
But beyond the statistics and the headlines, there's a human story unfolding here.
Absolutely.
A story of aspirations, challenges, triumphs and setbacks.
That's true.
And I think it's that human element that makes India such a captivating place to watch and learn from.
Beautifully put. It's a story that's still being written.
Yeah, it is.
And I, for one, am eager to see what the next chapter holds.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Of course.
And keep those minds curious.